Welcome, everybody, to the 26th episode of Stories from the Last Territory, a podcast that covers the golden years of wrestling in the island of Puerto Rico. My name is Luis Cuevas, better known as the Caveman, and I am your host for this trip back in time to the greatest feuds in the history of Puerto Rico. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on YouTube under the channel Desde los Territorios, or in audio at Spotify as Stories from the Last Territory. Like we mentioned in the past episode, today we're going to be taking a look at the year by year of Capital Sports Promotion. And today we're going to be looking at the year 1981, a very interesting year as the influence of the NWA, especially the world title, became the main focus of the promotion. And the goal was to see if Carlos Colon could be that next NWA World Heavyweight Champion. The year, like I mentioned, started with an historic moment in the history of Capital Sports Promotion. The first time the NWA World Heavyweight Champion was defended under the Capital Sports Promotion banner. Since 1960, according to Francisco Aurrio and his wrestling clippings, the world title had been defended in many different ways across the island, especially with the Lucheo promotions of the Folia Championship Wrestling banner that used to be running cards in the 60s and 70s, and also by other independent promoters, but never under the Capital Sports Promotion. And this was a big deal. The promotion pushed Harley Race as the greatest NWA champion, and this helped that the Three Kings Day card, which is the card that starts always every year in the Roberto Clemente, was packed to the rafters because it was the local hero, Carlos Colon, who had beaten Abdullah the Butcher to gain a title shot facing Harley Race for the NWA title. This card was also important because it was the debut of a tag team that were to become the main tag team in the 1981, and we're talking about the Cheap Herders. The Three Kings card was held at Roberto Clemente on January 6th of 1981, and it was a sellout. So that means that there were about 12,000 to 13,000 people in the event. In the first match, it started with a 14-man battle royal, and the entrants were Mighty Eagle, Invader One, El Gran Apolo, Asushi Onita, Buck Rublick, who I just found out was the booker during this time of Capital Sports Promotion, Butch Miller, Victor Jovica, Johnny Rivera, Jose Miguel Perez, Dutch Mantel, Danny Condry, who we know as Honky Tonk Man, Luke Williams, Maravilla, and the Destroyer. And this battle royal was won in a surprise by Maravilla, who to that time had been like an opening day, opening match wrestler. And he tossed Onita and Condry at the end to set him up to become the number one contender to the Caribbean title held by Danny Condry. Also, in that card, Haiti Kid defeated Carolina Kid in a midget match. Jose Rivera defeated Hugo Sabinovich. Dutch Mantel and Danny Condry or Wayne Ferris defeated Mighty Eagle and Invader One to win the North American tag team titles. And Harley Race beat Carlos Colon. But this match had a very strange ending. During the whole card, there was this guy dressed as Santa Claus giving candy and toys for the little kids. And this guy dressed in Santa Claus interfered in the match, attacking Carlos Colon and costing him the title right when he had Harley Race beat it. Then he took out his mask, and he was none other than Dutch Mantel, who came to the ring dressed as Santa Claus to attack Carlos Colon and cost him the title. This set up the culmination of the Dutch versus Carlos feud that had been going on since 1979, and it led to Carlos Colon forming a tag team with Invader One, and they call this tag team La Pareja Biónica, or the Bionic Team. For some reason, I don't know why, in Puerto Rico, they had a thing of calling the faces a very special name for the tag teams. We had La Pareja Atómica, Los Acróbatas, La Pareja Dinámica. They always have like this weird names for tag teams. I don't know why they did it. And they defeated Danny Condry and Dutch Mantel for the North American title in a televised match, a title change that was not so common those days to see on TV. In another card, in what was considered a major upset at that time, Maravilla upset Danny Condry and won the Caribbean title, this becoming a huge surprise. As again, Maravilla was known to be an opening or second match card guy in Puerto Rico. During this time, Killer Card Crew Haru Sonada, Jack Briscoe, they came to work in the island alongside a tag team called the Medics, which I am not sure if it was Johnny Rods and Jose Estrada or it was somebody different under the mask in this run. And I asked around, and some people say it was Johnny Rods and Jose Estrada. Some people say it was somebody else. So I'm not quite sure. While all this was going on, the Chip Herders, Luke Williams and Butch Miller, kept amusing victories over all the combinations that Capitol threw at them. And finally, they got a match at the Atomic Team. And after a couple matches where both teams were DQ or count out, in February 28th, a match was signed between both teams with lumberjacks or wrestlers surrounding the ring. When it looked like Invader One was going to pin Luke Williams to retain the title, Killer Karl Krupp, using his riding crop, hit Invader in the head with it, and that led to the Chip Herders winning the North American Tag Team titles over the Bionic Team. Another very interesting feud that was going on during this time was the Pierre Martel versus Killer Karl Krupp feud. As everybody knows, Killer Karl Krupp had like a Nazi Germany rhetoric accusing Martel of being a French coward and attacking Martel in a TV program and actually winning the North American title from him. This led to a series of matches between them, leading to a match on March 21 where Martel faced Krupp with his loaded boot. Something interesting about Capitol Sports Promotion during the 80s and 81 was like every month they had like a different main feud to give the guys rest, and it kept the product kind of fresh in a way, and it helped for the product not to become stagnant. They always had like, in January it was Carlos Colon versus Dutch. In February it was the Chip Herders against Carlos and Invader, Martel versus Killer Karl Krupp, and it just kept going. And like in March, for example, another very interesting storyline that happened during this month on March happened between Abdullah the Butcher and Mighty Eagle that started on TV. There was a challenge on who was the strongest man, and this was hype on TV. And they finally, in the TV tapings, they had Mighty Eagle face Abdullah the Butcher in a Texas strength, to say the least. And their managers wanted to prove who was the stronger one between them. So Miguel Perez, father, who was the manager of Mighty Eagle, gave a piece of change to Eagle, who broke it. Then Hugo Sabinovich, who had his máquina, Abdullah, gave a piece to his protege Abdullah, who, when he saw he couldn't, broke the chain, attacked Mighty Eagle with it, starting a mini feud between them that led to a chain match in the March 21st card. During this time also, Invader One started teaming with Ciclón Negro to battle against the Chip Herders for the North American Tag Team titles. With a couple of matches where the Rule Breakers would cheat to retain, the referee would be knocked down. So to settle the matter, a match was signed between both teams with two referees to make sure there was a winner. And in that match, the Chip Herders retained the titles. In March, we saw the debut of Tommy Gilbert, who had just started wrestling in the island, and he became the Caribbean heavyweight champion by defeating Medico 2, who had just defeated Maravilla. So they did it. Maravilla had the title, Medic 2 won it, and then immediately Tommy Gilbert won the title. So all that was happening in March of 1981. The month of April was also it was announced that Harley Race will be coming back to the island, and a rematch was set between him and Carlos Colon for the world title. That Andre the Giant also will be visiting Puerto Rico. It was announced that a Night of Champions card will be held that April 18th in Irán Bison Stadium. But before that card happened, there was going to be a match, a heel versus heel tag team match between the Chip Herders against the Medics for the North American Tag Team titles. And to the surprise of everyone, it didn't end in a DQ and a count out. No, but the Medics actually won the North American Tag Team titles from the Chip Herders in that card. During that month of April, Invader One started a feud with Killer Karl Krupp due to him costing him the North American Tag Team titles in February 28th. And that match led to multiple countouts and Krupp running to the dressing room. So a lumberjack match was signed for the Night of Champions card. Andre the Giant came to the island and he won a battle royal in the city of Ponce. And it was announced also that the Funk brothers, Terry and Dory Funk, will also be defending the World Tag Team titles in the Night of Champions card. That card was a major success for Capitol, as more than 20,000 fans saw the following card that night. In the first match, Tommy Gilbert defended the Caribbean title against Luke Williams. The Medics 1 and 2 defeated Pierre and Rick Martel to retain the North American Tag Team titles. In a lumberjack match, Killer Car Club defeated the Invader 1. Jack Veneno retained the Dominican Republic heavyweight title, defeating Relámpago Hernandez. For the NWA World Junior Heavyweight title, Les Torton and Dick Steinbo battled to a time limit draw. Dory and Terry Funk defeated Mil Máscaras and Jerry Briscoe to retain the World Tag Team titles. And in the main event, Harley Race defeated Carlos Colon to retain the National Wrestling Alliance heavyweight champion. So that was a big, huge card for Capitol Sports Promotion. And during this time, new wrestlers start coming to the island as they keep recycling wrestlers from different places. Black Gorman debuted for the WWC or Capitol Sports Promotion during this time, and two female wrestlers appeared during this time, Carol Summers and Lenani Kai. In May, there was a match between Hugo Sabinovich, who was a manager, who wrestled a cirujano, translated into the surgeon in English, who had become the Medics manager. Not sure who he was, and doing research, I couldn't find anything, so I apologize for that. I have to be honest, it was the first I heard about this character during this time. In a match between Carlos Colon and Killer Car Club, where the North American and Puerto Rican titles were on the line, both titles were held up, which set up a rematch that, of course, was won by none other than Carlos Colon. A rematch between the heel teams, the Cheap Herders against the Medics, took place, when this time the Cheap Herders got their victory back. And Kim Sung debuted and immediately became the Caribbean heavyweight champion by defeating none other than Tommy Gilbert. So it seemed like the Caribbean title during that year just kept changing hands all around the place. In the TV taping of May 23rd, a huge angle occurred when Black Gorman attacked and hurt the Invader 1, who had to do a stretcher job, which led to him being out of circulation for a while. I think he was in Japan during this time, but I could be wrong. During this time, Invader 1's friend, Pierre Martel, tried to gain revenge against Black Gorman until Invader 1 came back to the island. Jack Briscoe came in and defeated Kim Sung to become the new Caribbean heavyweight champion. Like I said, that title jumped and changed hands so much during 1981, it's almost ridiculous. The Cheap Herders became Luke Williams and a wrestler known as Johnny Miller, as Butch was injured by the Medics, and that made the war between them grew in intensity. And that was a really weird thing to see, heels against heels during this time, but that was what was going on in Puerto Rico in 1981. Sadly, like I mentioned, there's no video of any of this. It's mostly newspaper clippings or magazine clippings, but video, sadly, there's nothing really into like July of 1982. The month of June saw Carlos Colon take trips to Florida, where he and Gran Apollo faced, for example, the Cheap Herders in a match over there. And he also went to Japan during this time. But again, every month they had a different main feud. And in June, the main feud was none other than the Black Gorman versus Pierre Martel that continued to draw big houses during that month of June. Another big angle occurred during this month when, after a match with the Cheap Herders, Ciclón Negro turned on his partner Jose Rivera, leading to another half feud during this month, with both of them fighting in all types of stipulation match. So while Invader was out, while Carlos Colon was out, Jose Rivera and Pierre Martel were basically the main faces of this time, batting Black Gorman and Ciclón Negro respectively. June saw a huge title change in Trinidad Tobago when Abdullah the Butcher defeated Carlos Colon to win both the Puerto Rican title and the North American title. And it was a big surprise, as usually titles did not change hands on those house shows, or if they changed hands, it was kind of like a phantom title change. But this one was recognized by Capital Sports Promotion, and Abdullah became the holder of both the Puerto Rican and the North American title. While all this was going on, in July, for some reason, they decided to have like a reset, basically. And it was a slow month for Capital Sports Promotions, with the war between Jose Rivera and Ciclón Negro being the main attraction with them, including having like a boxing match as part of their feud, where Ciclón Negro defeated Jose Rivera in that one. Month of July, well, the Martel brothers, Daniel and Pierre, wrestlers the Chip Herders, with the winner winning a tag team title match against the Funk brothers, which saw the Martel brothers win to secure a title match. And that was basically it. Oh, well, no, I forgot the main detail. At the end of July, Invader 1 came back, but he claimed that he would not return to wrestle until he got a match against Black Gorman with his tight fist like he always had when there was a vengeance. August saw the action pick up. A short feud between Carlos Colon and Ciclón Negro that saw Carlos winning the hair of Ciclón Negro, and that's led to the often used angle, the Buddy Roberts angle that I call with the Freebirds. So many other wrestlers that once they lose a hair match, they start wearing a mask to hide their identity, and then the faces got to try and take out the mask so people can see the rule breaker, in chain. So this was then the chase to take out the mask of Ciclón Negro became like one of the big feuds of the island during that time. Invader finally got his match against Black Gorman, and in August 8th, we also had a couple returns and debuts during this month, with Invader 2 returning to the island, or Roberto Soto as a heel. Mr. Pogo debuted for WWC, and he became a very important part of Capital Sports Promotion during the next couple of years. Sweet Daddy Davis, who was better known as Sweet Daddy Siki, came to the wrestling in the island for Capital Sports Promotion during this month of August. The Kangaroos returned, the Fabulous Kangaroos returned to Capital, only this time, I believe, going by records of Matt Farmer, that it was Don Kent and Bruno Beccard. And the Briscoe brothers also came back, and this time they faced the Chip Herders for the North American title and defeated them, becoming the champions. Jose Rivera, who had just finished a feud with Ciclón Negro, started a feud with none other than King Song, and this led to a stipulation match where both were wearing judo jackets. And it's weird. It seems like Jose Rivera was always involved in some weird stipulation matches during the 80s and 81, like karate fights, judo jacket matches, boxing matches. If there was a weird stipulation match, you could pretty much be assured that Jose Rivera was involved in one of them. Very interesting. The main storyline during the month of August saw Carlos Colon wanting a rematch with Abdullah the Butcher for the titles, the North American titles and the Puerto Rican titles that he had lost in Trinidad. And Hugo Sabinovich trying the impossible not to have the match. Finally, Hugo Sabinovich put the stipulation that if Carlos Colon defeated Mr. Pogo, who was his new associate, he was going to be able to have a title shot. And that was, a big match that was held during that time. And guess what? Carlos Colon won. So he finally got his rematch against none other than Abdullah the Butcher. September usually is the hottest month for Capital Sports Promotion. Usually that's where they used to hold their anniversary shows. And during this time, they didn't have an anniversary show, but always September. Always have a big card in Capital Sports Promotion. It's a tradition. At least it was during the territory days. And like I mentioned, it had a month of crazy matches. We saw Invader 1 getting the match he wanted against Black Gorman with his tight fist. Pierre Martel and Ciclón Negro that had a feud with Pierre winning the mask of Ciclón Negro that he had been using since he lost his hair match. A rare babyface versus babyface match took place between Invader and Pierre Martel versus the Briscoe brothers for the North American tag team titles. Carlos Colon got his desired match against Abdullah first in September 12th in a match that ended in a WDQ, and then in September 28th in a barbed wire match. And that saw Carlos Colon recover his title. Jose Rivera had a feud with the Kangaroos and Duncan on his own. That led to a street fight also on September 26th of that year. So September was a huge, huge month for Capital Sports Promotion. October continued that hot period of Capital Sports Promotion with feuds and storylines, and it built to the big card of October 21st. Invader 2, like I mentioned previously, had come back, and he restarted his feud again with Invader 1 in different type of matches, including a cage match. We also saw the debut of a wrestler called Super Gladiador, who appeared for the first time. Later in late 1990s and 2000, there was another Super Gladiador, but this is a different one. And he started teaming with Invader 1. In the October 21st card, it was announced a match between Carlos Colon versus Harley Race, where Carlos Colon defeated Harley Race to earn an NWA title shot. The Kangaroos took on the Briscoes and won the North American title, and Jose Rivera had his rematch with Ciclón Negro in a boxing match, where in this occasion, Jose Rivera got his win back. And that was like September and October. It was just like one big card after another, big feuds after another, and the attendance were like really, really up. In November, they cooled down again, and they start working on new storylines for the end of the year card that they usually held before Christmas, and you start seeing new wrestlers and new things going on. But the main feud continued to be Carlos Colon versus Abdullah. Les Thornton came to defend the junior title during that time. He lost it to Joe Lightfoot, who had started wrestling in Puerto Rico but recovered within weeks. Invader 1 and Super Gladiador form a successful team, and they start challenging none other than the Kangaroos during this time for the North American titles. There was a stretcher match between Abdullah and Carlos Colon over the North American title. That match ended when Abdullah hurt Carlos Colon's right eye, and he also hit Joe Colon, one of Carlos Colon's brothers. And Jose Colon will be an important part of Capital Sports Promotion during the next 10 years, where there was always a big angle where somebody will beat up Jose Colon. He was the accountant of Capital Sports Promotion during this time. And in a funny aside, he later left Capital and started a new promotion called Latin American Wrestling Association, or LAW, that was a competition for Capital Sports Promotions in the mid-2000s. Well, actually about 5-6 years ago. But it started with a band, but they had money problems, and they end up having to close once they had started, getting traction in the island. They just ran short on money, but that's a story from another day. In a TV title match, Invader and Super Gladiador won the North American Tag Team titles from the Kangaroos. Hans Mueller appeared in Capital Sports Promotion during this time. Chico Santana and Carolina Kidd came to the island during this time as part of the midget attraction that they had was going during this time in November. But November was basically, besides the Carlos and Abdullah feud, it was mostly a reset to warm things up for the December card. In December, they pick up right away. You saw a coal miners match between Invader and Super Gladiador against the Kangaroos for the North American title. A week later, they had a barbed wire match. I mean, they fought over all types of kind of matches during that month of December. And they start announcing some wrestlers that will be coming to the island during this time. And we had Pedro Morales, who have been, a WWF US champion, WWF Intercontinental champion, World champion, and tag team champion, coming to the island for the first time under the Capital Sports banner, even though he came under the Florida Championship Wrestling banner in the 70s. During this time in the United States, as everybody knows, Harley Race lost the title to Ric Flair, and they start promoting Ric Flair coming to the island during the year 1981. And Ric Flair became a huge, huge main attraction in Puerto Rico during what night from the end of 1981 all the way to 86. That was the last time that he came to the island, and they start promoting Ric Flair, and he starts sending interviews, and he was determined that the first man to get a title shot against Ric Flair coming to the island. And I thought this was smart, uh, not setting him up right away with Carlos Colon. It was announced that Pierre Martel was going to receive an NWA title shot at the end of the year card. Jerry Briscoe also came to the island and received a junior title shot against none other than Les Thornton. So the main card of the year-end card also had Carlos Colon facing Abdullah the Butcher in a super free match. A super free match is a match with no rules. It's basically like a Texas death match into one of them doesn't continue. The referee is just there to make sure, somebody gets up to do the counter. It was a famous match in the island. I don't know where they got it from, but it always worked as a gimmick match here in Puerto Rico. So Pierre Martel and Ric Flair wrestled to an hour, and that's one of those matches that has always been a collector's dream to have, but nobody has it. I don't even know if they show it on TV, to be honest. It's like one of those, like the Tommy Rich versus Bruce Sawyer or Bret Hart versus Tom McGee. Well, this is the match, one of the matches that people have always wanted to see. The first NWA title match of Ric Flair in the island. But sadly, there's no video. So you see, 81 was a great year in territory, but this is nothing compared to what happened in 1982. 82, for me, was a great, great year, and we're going to be talking about it. We saw the super tag, rule breaker tag team of Mongolian Stomper and Abdullah the Butcher beating the crap out of the faces, and that led to a union. You saw Ric Flair becoming a main part of the Capital Sports Promotion feuds. We also saw the creation of a new world title, the World Wrestling Council heavyweight title. So we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks when we come back in our year-to-year look at Capital Sports Promotions. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this 1981 look at Capital Sports Promotion. If you have any questions, please leave it in your comment section or send me an email at luiscuevas36@gmail.com, and I'll be more than happy to answer it. Into 2 weeks from now, I want to thank everybody that takes their time to listen to this. And if you know somebody who might like this podcast, please share it with them. And into then, like I always say, sayonara, amigos.